Welcome back today, coin collectors and treasure hunters. We are diving into the world of United Kingdom one-penny coins. While most people see the penny as just a small piece of change, certain rare editions of this coin can actually be worth hundreds, and in some cases, thousands of dollars at auction. In this video, we will explore the most valuable top 10 one-penny coins in different conditions, uncovering their history, rarity, unique features, and the huge prices they've fetched in the collector's market. So, if you've got a jar of old pennies lying around, you might just be holding on to a hidden fortune. So let's get started. First up, we will be diving into the fascinating story of the United Kingdom one penny from 1936, a coin that may seem ordinary at first glance, but in reality, holds a special place in numismatic history. In fine condition, this coin can fetch impressive prices at auction, making it a rare treasure for collectors. We'll explore its background, unique design features, why it is in such high demand, its current market value in dollars, and finally, some important tips for collectors who may be searching for this gem. The year 1936 is famously known in British history as the Year of the Three Kings. In that single year, three monarchs sat on the throne: George V, Edward VIII, and George VI. This unusual transition left a significant mark on coinage, especially the penny. The 1936 penny was issued during the reign of King George V, who passed away early that year. Since Edward VIII abdicated before his coins were officially released, his portrait never appeared on circulating pennies. Instead, the 1936 penny remained one of the last coins struck with George V's portrait, making it a historically important issue tied to a year of extraordinary royal events. The 1936 one penny was struck in bronze, measuring 31 millimeters in diameter and weighing 9.4 grams. On the obverse side, it features the portrait of King George V, designed by Sir Bertram Mackennal, with the Latin inscription Georgives Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def. IND, IMP, encircling the king's bust. The reverse displays the iconic seated Britannia holding a trident and shield, a design that had been a mainstay on British pennies for decades. The lettering one penny and the date 1936 appear below. While the design may appear traditional, its historical significance combined with the events of that year makes this coin stand out among collectors. Although millions of pennies were struck in 1936, the coin's rarity comes not from a low mintage but from its connection to a year of major royal transitions. Collectors value it highly because it represents the final penny of George V's reign and a link to the succession crisis that followed. Furthermore, finding the coin in fine condition or higher is not always easy, since many examples circulated heavily before the decimalization of Britain's coinage in 1971. As a result, coins that have survived with clear details and minimal wear are in much higher demand than average circulated examples. Now let's talk about the market value. A 1936 one penny in fine condition can be worth anywhere from $2,040, depending on the sharpness of the details and the overall eye appeal. In very fine to extremely fine grades, prices can rise between $5,000. However, collectors with coins in uncirculated or mint state condition have seen values climb significantly higher, sometimes reaching $6,500 in major auctions. This shows how condition plays a vital role in determining the coin's worth. If you're interested in adding a 1936 penny to your collection, here are a few tips. Always pay attention to the grade of the coin. Fine condition is a good starting point, but higher grades will always bring more value. Ensure authenticity by purchasing from trusted dealers or auction houses, as replicas and clean coins are not uncommon. Store your coin properly in acid-free holders or coin flips to preserve its condition and prevent further wear. Finally, consider the coin as both a historical collectible and a long-term investment, since demand for coins linked to royal history is consistently strong among collectors. The United Kingdom one penny of 1936 is far more than just a small bronze coin. It is a piece of history that tells the story of a unique year in the British monarchy. With its strong demand, historical importance, and rising auction values, this coin continues to be a prized possession for serious collectors. Whether you own one already or are still hunting for it, the 1936 penny stands as a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins can carry extraordinary value. Next up, we're diving into the world of British numismatics to explore a truly remarkable and rare piece. The United Kingdom one penny from 1913. While many pennies from this era were produced in large numbers, finding one in a unique black, rusty condition makes it stand out as a fascinating collectible. This coin isn't just a small piece of copper. It's a fragment of British history, with rarity and collector demand giving it significant value in today's auction market. The 1913 one penny was struck during the reign of King George V, who ruled from 1910 until 1936. This period was marked by major social and political changes, including the years leading up to the First World War. The British penny itself has a long history, dating back centuries, and in 1913, it was still a vital part of everyday commerce. Made primarily of bronze, this coin bore the portrait of King George V on the obverse, while the reverse featured the iconic figure of Britannia, symbolizing strength, naval power, and stability. Coins from this era not only carried monetary value, but also represented the pride of the British Empire at its height. The 1913 penny carries several distinctive features that make it attractive to collectors. On the front, we see the left-facing portrait of King George V with the inscription, Georges V de Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, and IMP, which translates to George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. The reverse shows Britannia seated with a shield and trident, a design used on British pennies for decades. What makes this coin particularly interesting in black, rusty condition is its aged patina and corrosion, which, while generally considered damage, can give the coin a unique look and historical feel. Some collectors appreciate the natural darkening and surface as a sign of authenticity and age, especially when the details of the design are still visible. Although millions of pennies were minted in 1913, only a small fraction survive today in collectible condition. Over the years, many were lost, melted down, or worn out through heavy circulation. A coin surviving for more than a century is already significant, but when found with unique surface aging or in a rare condition like a black, rustic patina, it becomes even more desirable. Collectors often seek 1913 pennies to complete their George V series, and since every coin tells its own story, variations in condition can make one penny stand out above the rest. Now, let's talk about value. A 1913 one penny in heavily circulated or rusty condition might fetch a modest price, usually around $1,540, depending on the degree of corrosion and detail left visible. However, coins with clearer features despite their patina, or those with rare striking errors, can rise significantly in value. Well-preserved 1913 pennies in excellent condition often sell for $2,590, while uncirculated examples can go for several $100s at auctions. For a black, rustic condition coin, the value lies more in its historical appeal and uniqueness, meaning specialized collectors may pay a premium, especially if the coin retains strong detail despite its aging. If you're interested in collecting a 1913 penny, here are a few tips. Always verify authenticity with a reputable dealer or grading service, as counterfeits exist for valuable British coins. When buying coins in rustic or corroded condition, pay attention to how much of the original design is still visible, since clearer details mean higher value. Also, proper storage is essential. Avoid cleaning the coin, as this can reduce its collector worth. Instead, store it in a protective holder in a dry environment to prevent further damage. Collectors also recommend comparing auction sales to understand current market trends before making any purchase or sale. The United Kingdom one penny from 1913 is more than just a coin. It's a symbol of British history during the reign of George V and the years before World War I. Whether in mint condition or found in a rustic black patina, it carries a story of time, trade, and survival over a century. With growing interest in rare and historical coins, the 1913 penny remains a sought-after piece in auctions and private collections worldwide. For collectors, owning one of these coins is like holding a small but significant piece of the past in their hands. Next up, we're diving into the fascinating story of the United Kingdom one penny from 1916, a coin that might look ordinary at first glance, but can actually hold remarkable value in the collector's market. especially when preserved in very fine condition. We'll explore its background, unique design features, why it's so sought after, and how much it could be worth in today's auction market in dollars. The year 1916 was a significant moment in British history. World War I was in full swing, and the country was pouring immense resources into the war effort. Despite these challenging times, the Royal Mint continued producing coinage for circulation, ensuring everyday trade could continue smoothly. The 1916 penny was part of the long-running bronze penny series that began in 1860 under Queen Victoria and continued under subsequent monarchs. By 1916, the throne was held by King George V, whose portrait graced the obverse of the coin. These pennies not only served as currency, but also became silent witnesses to one of the most turbulent times in modern British history. The 1916 one penny carries the iconic design that collectors love. On the obverse, we see the left-facing portrait of King George V, designed by Bertram Mackennal, a distinguished sculptor of the period. His regal profile is surrounded by the Latin inscription, Georgius Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, IND, IMP, which translates to George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, the coin features the classic seated Britannia, holding a trident and shield, symbolizing Britain's strength and naval power. The date, 1916, appears clearly at the bottom. Struck in bronze, this coin weighs around 9.4 grams with a diameter of 30.8 millimeters, making it a substantial coin compared to modern pennies. While millions of pennies were struck in 1916, the real rarity lies in finding examples in high grades of preservation. Many of these coins were heavily circulated during wartime, meaning they often appear today in worn or poor condition. A very fine condition 1916 penny stands out because the details of George V's portrait and Britannia's figure remain crisp and clear, with only slight signs of wear. Collectors place significant value on such coins, as they are much harder to come by. Additionally, wartime coinage always carries a special appeal because of its historical significance. Coins struck during World War I remind us of the resilience of the nation during one of its darkest periods, adding another layer of desirability for historians and numismatists alike. When it comes to the auction market, condition is everything. A heavily circulated 1916 penny may only fetch a few dollars, often between $5,500. However, in very fine condition, the story changes dramatically. Collectors are willing to pay a premium for well-preserved examples. Such a coin can command prices ranging from $12,000, depending on the buyer's interest and the auction setting. In some cases, particularly sharp specimens with minimal wear have been known to reach even higher figures. The demand is strong, and with the growing global interest in British coinage, values continue to climb steadily. If you're lucky enough to own or find a 1916 one penny, here are a few tips to maximize its value. First, always handle it carefully by the edges to avoid fingerprints and damage. Second, avoid cleaning the coin, as this can reduce its worth significantly. Collectors prefer natural patina. Third, consider having the coin professionally graded by a reputable service, as certification adds credibility and can raise its market appeal. Lastly, keep an eye on auction houses and online coin sales. These are excellent places to gauge current demand and pricing trends. The United Kingdom one penny from 1916 in very fine condition is far more than just an old coin. It is a tangible piece of history, struck during the difficult days of World War I and now cherished by collectors for its rarity, artistry, and enduring value. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or just starting your collection, this coin stands as a reminder of Britain's resilience and an exciting opportunity in the auction market. So next time you come across a 1916 penny, take a closer look. You might just be holding a small fortune in your hand. Next up, we're diving deep into the fascinating story of the United Kingdom one penny from the year 1907, a coin that holds a special place in numismatic history. What makes this discussion even more unique is that we'll be exploring an example in black rusty, damaged condition estate that often sparks debates among collectors regarding rarity, historical value, and current market price. Even in less than perfect shape, This coin continues to capture the attention of serious collectors across the globe. The 1907 one penny belongs to the Edwardian era, under the reign of King Edward VII, who ruled the United Kingdom from 1901 until his death in 1910. Coins struck during his short reign are historically significant, as they symbolize a transitional period from the Victorian age to the early modern 20th century. The penny itself was part of the bronze coinage system, introduced back in 1860, and remained a crucial piece of everyday commerce. By 1907, pennies were produced in large numbers, but many have since worn away, corroded, or disappeared from circulation, making surviving examples, especially rare ones, important to collectors today. The 1907 one penny showcases a portrait of King Edward VII on the obverse, designed by George William de Saulles. His profile faces right, with the inscription Edward 7 de Jare, Brit, OMN, Rex FID, Def, IND, IMP, encircling the rim. On the reverse, we see the seated figure of Britannia, holding her trident and shield, a proud emblem of Britain's maritime power. In black, rusty, or damaged condition, the fine details of the portrait and Britannia might be partially lost, but the coin still maintains its historic charm. Interestingly, many collectors consider such imperfections a window into the coin's long life, symbolizing over a century of circulation, environmental exposure, and survival. While the 1907 penny was not a low-mintage coin, finding an original piece in any collectible condition today is becoming rarer. Most were heavily used in circulation, and time has not been kind to bronze coins, which are prone to oxidation and rust-like corrosion. This is why a black rusty example, although technically damaged, can still attract interest, especially from those who collect coins with natural aging or historical character. For collectors of Edwardian coinage, every surviving example, whether pristine or worn, adds depth to their collection, and rarities such as mint errors or low-grade survival pieces sometimes carry niche demand. The value of a 1907 UK one penny varies greatly, depending on condition. In pristine, uncirculated, or proof condition, these coins can fetch $3,000 or more at auctions. However, when we turn our attention to a black, rusty, or damaged coin, the market behaves differently. Even with corrosion, collectors often pay between $7,500, depending on the extent of the damage and overall eye appeal. What's fascinating is that in some auction cases, uniquely aged or heavily patinated coins have attracted higher bids, not for their traditional numismatic grade, but for their character and rarity of survival. This shows how demand is shaped not just by condition, but also by collector interest in history and uniqueness. If you come across a 1907 one penny in rusty or damaged condition, the first rule is do not attempt harsh cleaning. Over-polishing or scrubbing can reduce its value further and strip away the very patina that some collectors find appealing. Instead, store it properly in a dry environment to prevent further corrosion. For those looking to invest, it may be wise to also seek better preserved examples of the coin, as higher grades hold stronger long-term market value. However, having a rusty piece in your collection tells a story of survival, giving your set character and diversity. Always check auction sites and collector forums, because sometimes even unusual examples like these find buyers willing to pay more than expected. The United Kingdom one penny of 1907 stands as a historic and collectible coin from the reign of King Edward VII. While examples in black, rusty, and damaged condition may not bring the same high dollar values as pristine pieces, they remain fascinating and often underestimated parts of numismatic history. For collectors, each coin, regardless of condition, tells a story of the past, of hands that spent it, and of the world it traveled through. So, whether you're holding a shiny, uncirculated penny or a corroded, blackened survivor, remember that both have their rightful place in the grand journey of coin collecting. Next up, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating pieces of British numismatic history, the United Kingdom 1917 one penny coin. Now, you may be thinking, it's just an old penny, but don't be fooled. Even in blackened, worn condition, this coin carries historical weight, rarity appeal, and potential value in today's auction market. If you've ever come across a 1917 penny that looks dark or heavily circulated, you might just be holding on to a hidden treasure worth more than you think. The year 1917 was a pivotal moment in world history, as the First World War was at its peak. The UK Mint continued producing pennies for circulation to keep up with wartime economic demands. These coins were struck in bronze and featured the reigning monarch of the time, King George V, who was king from 1910 to 1936. Millions of these pennies were minted, but over a century later, most have been lost, damaged, or corroded beyond recognition. The surviving examples are living relics of Britain's wartime economy and serve as a small but powerful reminder of that turbulent period in global history. The 1917 one penny showcases classic British design elements. On the obverse, you'll find the bareheaded portrait of King George V, facing left, with the Latin inscription around the edge reading, Georgius Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, IND, IMP. This translates to George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, the iconic seated figure of Britannia is displayed, holding a trident and shield, symbolizing strength and naval dominance. Even in black worn condition, with much of its original details faded, the overall design remains recognizable to trained collectors. The blackened appearance often comes from years of oxidation, exposure, or improper storage, giving the coin a darker patina that adds character to its journey through history. Although the 1917 penny was minted in significant numbers, finding one today in collectible condition is not as easy as it sounds. Many examples have been melted down, lost, or worn to the point of near unrecognizability. The fact that these coins circulated during the First World War adds to their historical interest. Even in worn or blackened condition, collectors actively seek them out to fill gaps in their George V penny collections. Higher-grade examples are far rarer, but even circulated pieces spark interest because they hold direct ties to a crucial era in British history. The demand is fueled not just by rarity, but also by the historical narrative that accompanies each coin. So, how much is a 1917 one penny worth today in the market? The answer depends heavily on its condition. A black worn example with significant circulation marks and faded details can still fetch $5,000 at auction, especially if the coin retains visible lettering and date. Coins in fine to very fine condition can sell between $6,000, while extremely fine or uncirculated examples can reach into the thousands of dollars. In some rare cases, especially with high-grade certified specimens, values have climbed upwards of $8,300. This shows that even though a worn 1917 penny might not appear valuable at first glance, it holds steady demand and often surprises sellers when brought to the auction market. If you're interested in collecting or investing in the 1917 one penny, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, always check the condition details such as the king's portrait and Britannia's trident are critical in determining value. Even a black worn penny can be desirable if the date is clearly legible. Second, look for authenticity. Counterfeits do exist, though they are less common in pennies compared to gold or silver coins. Third, consider storage if you have one in your possession. Store it properly in a dry holder to prevent further corrosion. And finally, keep an eye on auctions, both online and in person, as prices fluctuate based on collector interest and market trends. The United Kingdom 1917 one penny might appear as just another old bronze coin at first glance, but its historical significance, unique design, and collector demand make it a remarkable piece of numismatic history. Even in black worn condition, it remains a coin worth preserving and appreciating. With values ranging from modest to impressive depending on grade, this penny is proof that even the smallest coins can carry big stories and, sometimes, big money. So next time you come across a 1917 penny, don't dismiss it because you might just be holding on to a treasure from the time of World War I. Next up, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of British coinage as we take a closer look at the United Kingdom one penny from the year 1906. This coin may look worn and circulated to the untrained eye, but it carries a rich history, unique details, and surprising value in today's collector's market. Even in worn condition, the 1906 one penny remains an exciting piece for numismatists and history lovers alike. Let's explore why this coin continues to capture attention and how much it could fetch in dollars today. The 1906 one penny belongs to the Edwardian period of British coinage, struck during the reign of King Edward VII, who ruled from 1901 to 1910. His portrait featured prominently on coins of this era, and the penny was no exception. This coin was struck at the Royal Mint in London and was part of everyday currency in early 20th century Britain. The Edwardian pennies are historically important because they represent the transition between the long Victorian era and the approaching modern age of coinage under King George V. While millions were produced, many have been lost to time, melted down, or heavily worn from circulation, making good surviving examples rarer and more desirable. The 1906 one penny features King Edward VII's portrait on the obverse, designed by George William de Saulles. It shows the king facing right, with the Latin inscription Edward's 7-day Gre Brit Omen Rex Fid Def Indimp around the edge, which translates to Edward VII, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse side, the coin displays the iconic seated figure of Britannia holding a trident and shield, a symbol of British naval power and empire. The word one penny appears around the edge, with the date 1906 at the bottom. Its large bronze size, weighing about 9.45 grams with a diameter of 30.8 millimeters, gives it a bold and substantial presence compared to modern coins. While 1906 pennies are not the rarest of Edwardian issues, they are still over a century old and have become increasingly scarce in decent condition. The majority found today are heavily circulated and worn, often with faint details. Collectors are particularly keen on acquiring well-preserved examples, and even worn coins still attract attention due to their historical context. The demand for Edwardian pennies has grown steadily, especially among those who aim to complete full-date runs of British pennies from Queen Victoria through King George V. Now let's talk about value. A 1906 one penny in worn, circulated condition might not seem like much at first glance, but collectors are often willing to pay more than face value for coins of this age. Typically, a circulated example can range anywhere from $2,750, depending on wear and eye appeal. However, if the coin is in better preserved grades, prices climb higher. A fine or very fine example may fetch $5,500, while high-grade or uncirculated specimens can soar into the hundreds of dollars at auction. In rare cases, especially for coins certified by grading services with strong eye appeal, the value can go even higher, showing just how strong the collector market is for Edwardian pennies. If you come across a 1906 penny, there are a few key things to keep in mind. First, check the condition carefully. Details in the king's hair, Britannia's trident, and the date are important indicators of grade. Even a small difference in sharpness can affect value. Second, consider having better condition examples professionally graded, as certification increases trust and marketability. Third, always handle old coins carefully to avoid scratches, and store them in proper holders to preserve what detail remains. And finally, keep an eye on auction records and dealer prices, as the market for British pennies has been growing stronger year after year. So, there you have it, the story of the 1906 United Kingdom one penny. From its origins in the Edwardian era to its enduring demand among collectors, this coin is much more than just an old piece of bronze. Even in worn, circulated condition, it carries real value and continues to fascinate those who appreciate British history and numismatics. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just starting out, the 1906 penny is a coin worth keeping an eye on. Next up, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of British coins and focusing on one of the most interesting pieces from the early 20th century, the United Kingdom one penny of 1912. Even in circulated and worn condition, this coin has managed to capture the attention of collectors around the world due to its age, rarity, and connection to history. If you've ever come across one of these in an old collection, a family heirloom, or even a coin shop, you'll want to pay close attention because it could hold surprising value in today's auction market. The 1912 UK penny belongs to the reign of King George V, who took the throne in 1910 after the death of his father, King Edward VII. Coins from this era are significant because they reflect the British Empire at its height, a time when Britain controlled vast territories across the world. The penny was a major unit of everyday currency, widely used in trade, markets, and daily life. What makes the 1912 penny particularly interesting is its role in coinage production. This was a time when the Royal Mint sometimes outsourced minting to private mints due to high demand. In 1912, some pennies were struck at the Royal Mint in London, while others were produced by the Heaton Mint in Birmingham, marked with a small H below the date. That little detail would go on to play a huge role in the coin's collectability and value. The obverse side of the 1912 penny features the portrait of King George V, designed by Bertram Mackennal, with the Latin inscription Georgives Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, AND, IMP, which translates to George V by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, we see the iconic figure of Britannia, seated with her trident and shield, a long-standing design on the penny since the 19th century. The date, 1912, is placed at the bottom. But here's the detail that makes collectors excited. Some of these coins have a small H mint mark beneath the date, indicating they were struck at the Heaton Mint. This tiny letter makes a big difference in terms of rarity and market value. Now, when it comes to rarity, not all 1912 pennies are created equal. The regular issues from the Royal Mint are still collectible, but the 1912 H penny is much scarcer, making it a key find for serious collectors. Even in circulated and worn condition, the Heaton Mint variety stands out. Because most of these coins saw heavy circulation, finding them in pristine, uncirculated condition is extremely rare. Collectors love these coins not just for their historical significance, but also for the challenge of finding better preserved examples. That's why even a well-worn piece can spark bidding interest in auctions. For the standard Royal Mint issue in worn condition, values can range anywhere from $5,000, depending on the level of wear. However, when it comes to the 1912 H penny, things get much more exciting. In circulated worn condition, the value often starts around $6,000, and for slightly better preserved examples, prices can climb to $8,100 or more. At auction, high-grade or rare varieties of the 1912 penny have been known to fetch several $100s, especially when certified by a grading service. This proves that even coins that seem small or ordinary at first glance can surprise collectors with their value. If you're interested in collecting the 1912 penny, here are some tips. First, always look carefully for the H mint mark beneath the date, as it significantly increases the value. Second, even if your coin is heavily worn, don't dismiss it. Many collectors are willing to buy circulated examples for their sets. Third, consider having higher-grade examples authenticated and graded, as this can boost their market appeal and selling price. And finally, keep an eye on auction houses and online marketplaces, as the demand for this coin remains steady and new collectors are entering the hobby every year. The United Kingdom 1 penny of 1912 is much more than just a small piece of bronze. It represents a powerful era of British history, carries unique minting details, and continues to fascinate collectors more than a century later. Even in circulated and worn condition, this coin holds real value, especially if you happen to own the elusive 1912 H variety. So, if you ever come across one of these old pennies, don't dismiss it as pocket change. It could very well be a hidden gem worth real money in today's auction market. Next up, where we explore some of the most fascinating and valuable coins in British numismatic history. In today's video, we will take a closer look at the United Kingdom 1 penny from the year 1918, specifically in black worn condition. At first glance, this coin may seem like just another old penny, but collectors know that these coins hold significant historical value and, in certain cases, can fetch impressive prices at auction. Stay tuned as we uncover its history, unique features, rarity, and current market value in dollars. The 1918 penny was minted during the reign of King George V, a period marked by the aftermath of World War I. Britain's economy was recovering from war expenses, and millions of pennies were needed for everyday transactions. However, the 1918 issue is historically significant because, for the first time, part of the mintage was struck not only at the Royal Mint in London, but also by two private mints, the Heaton Mint in Birmingham and the King's Norton Metal Company. These outsourced coins were marked with small mint marks, making them highly collectible today. The coin itself represents Britain's resilience during a difficult time, as it continued to uphold its coinage tradition even under economic strain. The obverse side of the 1918 penny features the portrait of King George V facing left, designed by Bertram Mackennal. Around the king's image is the inscription Georgievs v de Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, IND, IMP, which translates to George V by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, we see the iconic figure of Britannia seated with a shield and trident, symbolizing Britain's naval strength and empire. What makes some 1918 pennies stand out is the small H, or KN, mint mark beneath the date, indicating Heaton or King's Norton mints. Even in a black worn condition, the design can still be recognized, and these subtle details make the coin particularly intriguing for collectors. While millions of pennies were minted in 1918, not all have survived in good condition. Many were lost, damaged, or melted down over the decades. Coins struck at the Heaton and King's Norton mints are scarcer than those from the Royal Mint, and they remain in strong demand among collectors. A black worn condition 1918 penny may not have the shine of a mint state coin, but its rarity lies in its age, history, and survival. Collectors often seek even worn examples to complete their sets, especially if the coin carries the distinguishing H or KN mint marks. These features make it far more than just a common old penny. The market value of a 1918 one penny depends heavily on its condition and mint mark. A heavily circulated or black worn coin without a mint mark may only fetch around $2,500. However, if the coin has the rare H or KN mint mark, values can increase significantly. In fine to very fine condition, such coins can sell for $5,200 at auctions. Higher-grade examples, especially those preserved in extremely fine or uncirculated condition, have been known to bring in $7,500 or more. Even a worn example with the right mint mark still holds collector value, often making it worth holding on to rather than spending. If you come across a 1918 penny, always inspect it carefully for mint marks beneath the date. The small H for Heaton or KN for King's Norton could make a huge difference in value. Store the coin properly in a protective case to prevent further wear, especially if it is already in fragile condition. Collectors should also familiarize themselves with the grading system, as condition is one of the biggest factors in determining value. Lastly, consider professional appraisal or certification if you believe your coin may be a rare variety or in better condition than average. Even worn coins have potential, and history has shown that demand for George V pennies continues to remain strong in the numismatic market. The 1918 one penny is more than just an old copper coin. It is a piece of British history minted during a time of recovery and change. Whether struck at the Royal Mint, Heaton, or King's Norton, these coins hold a story of resilience and tradition. In black worn condition, it may not seem glamorous, but collectors recognize its true value, especially when the rare mint marks are present. With values ranging from a few dollars to hundreds at auction, the 1918 penny proves that even the most humble coins can carry great worth. So, if you happen to have one in your collection, treasure it. It could be more valuable than you think. Next up, we'll be exploring a fascinating and highly collectible coin, the United Kingdom one penny from 1929, especially in very fine condition. This coin is not just a small piece of copper. It's a window into Britain's history during the reign of King George V. Collectors around the world value it not only for its age, but also for its rarity, unique features, and its increasing demand at auctions, where it continues to fetch impressive sums in dollars. The 1929 one penny belongs to the later part of King George V's coinage. George V, who reigned from 1910 until 1936, oversaw a period of significant change in the United Kingdom, including the aftermath of World War I and the economic turbulence of the late 1920s. The penny had been a staple in British currency for centuries, and the 1929 issue continued the traditional design that had been in use since the early 20th century. By the late 1920s, production of pennies had already begun to decline compared to earlier years, which makes certain dates, including 1929, more desirable to collectors today. The 1929 penny features a portrait of King George V on the obverse, designed by Bertram Mackennal. This regal portrait shows the king facing left, with the Latin inscription Georgievs Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, AND, IMP, meaning George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, the coin depicts the classic seated Britannia, holding a trident and shield, a symbol of strength and Britain's naval supremacy. The year 1929 is clearly struck below. These coins were struck in bronze and measured 31 millimeters in diameter, with a weight of about 9.45 grams, which gives them a solid feel in hand. While not the rarest penny of the George V era, the 1929 issue is considered relatively scarce, especially in higher grades. Coins that have survived nearly a century with minimal wear are much harder to find. In very fine condition, details like the king's portrait and Britannia's figure remain sharp, making such coins attractive to serious collectors. Many lower-grade examples exist due to heavy circulation, but coins preserved in fine or very fine condition are where the real collector interest lies. This consistent demand has ensured that 1929 pennies remain a staple in British numismatic collections worldwide. Now, let's talk about the market value. In average circulated condition, a 1929 penny might only fetch a few dollars. However, in very fine condition, values rise significantly. At auctions and coin fairs, these coins can often bring in $6,000, depending on the sharpness of details and overall eye appeal. Exceptional examples graded even higher, such as extremely fine or uncirculated, can sell for hundreds of dollars, sometimes exceeding $9,200 when demand peaks among collectors. With the growing interest in vintage British coinage, these prices are likely to stay strong or even climb further in the future. If you're considering adding a 1929 penny to your collection, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, always check the condition carefully. The clearer the details on George V's portrait and Britannia, the more valuable the coin will be. Second, look for coins with minimal marks, scratches, or corrosion, since bronze coins are prone to surface issues. Third, purchasing from reputable dealers or trusted auction houses ensures authenticity and better value for your money. Finally, storing your coin properly in a dry, protective holder will preserve its condition for future generations and possibly increase its market appeal. The 1929 United Kingdom 1 penny is more than just an old coin. It's a piece of history from the reign of King George V, carrying with it the heritage of Britain's economy and design tradition. In very fine condition, it becomes a highly desirable collectible, valued in the market for its rarity, detail, and enduring charm. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone just starting out, the 1929 penny is a coin worth keeping an eye on. So next time you come across one, you might just be holding a little treasure worth big dollars in today's numismatic world. Next up, we are diving into the fascinating story of a classic British coin, the United Kingdom 1 penny from the year 1928. At first glance, this coin might look ordinary, and sometimes you'll even come across it in a worn or dirty condition. But the truth is, despite its humble appearance, this coin has a rich history, unique features, and can command a surprisingly high value at auctions depending on its rarity and state of preservation. So, let's explore why the 1928 penny is such a special piece in the world of numismatics. The 1928 penny was issued during the reign of King George V, one of Britain's most significant monarchs in the early 20th century. His reign spanned from 1910 to 1936, covering a time of great change post-World War I recovery, social reforms, and economic challenges. The 1 penny coin during this era was made of bronze and remained an essential piece of currency for everyday transactions. Millions were minted in 1928, but as time has passed, the survival rate of these coins in collectible condition has dropped, making them more desirable to collectors today. What sets the 1928 penny apart are its distinct design elements. On the obverse, you'll find the portrait of King George V, designed by Bertram Mackennal, with the Latin inscription Georgievs Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, IND, IMP, meaning George V, by the grace of God, King of all Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, the iconic figure of Britannia is seated, holding a trident and shield, symbolizing Britain's naval strength and empire. The date, 1928, sits clearly at the bottom. Even in dirty or circulated condition, these design details often remain visible, and that adds to the historical charm of the coin. While the 1928 penny is not the rarest in the George V series, it still holds significant collector interest. Coins from the late 1920s are sought after because they represent the last decade of George V's reign before the brief reign of Edward VIII and later George VI. Over time, many of these coins were lost, melted, or heavily circulated, leaving fewer high-grade examples available today. Even coins in dirty or well-worn condition catch the eye of collectors, especially if the date is clear and the details are still visible. Rarity combined with demand means that these coins often find their way into auction houses and online sales where bidding can get competitive. So, how much is a 1928 one penny worth in today's market? In dirty or heavily circulated condition, this coin might fetch anywhere between $5,700 depending on visibility of the details and overall wear. However, coins that are in better condition, with sharper details and less surface damage, can easily reach $10,000 or more. In exceptional cases, where the coin has been preserved in almost mint state, collectors have paid hundreds of dollars at auction. Even a dirty 1928 penny can surprise sellers, as demand often drives the price higher than expected. If you come across a 1928 penny, don't dismiss it just because it looks dirty or worn. Always handle the coin carefully and avoid cleaning it, as cleaning can actually reduce its value. Instead, store it in a protective holder to prevent further damage. When buying, make sure to look out for coins with legible inscriptions and clear details of Britannia and George V's portrait. For serious collectors, consider seeking coins graded by reputable services, as certified coins often sell for higher prices and give you more confidence in the authenticity and condition. The 1928 United Kingdom one penny may not always sparkle like a freshly minted coin, but its value lies in its history, design, and collectability. Even in dirty or circulated condition, it remains a treasured piece of Britain's past and a favorite among coin enthusiasts. Whether you're a beginner starting your collection or an experienced numismatist hunting for high-grade examples, this coin is certainly one to keep an eye on. So next time you come across a 1928 penny, remember, it's more than just an old piece of bronze. It's a small but powerful link to history that could be worth far more than you think. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into rare British pennies, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more exciting coin stories.